Hey everybody, Jimmy with the Triple C Collective here, and with me, joining me for Collected Conversations, episode 2, is my friend, my writer, and author, Dave Scheidt.
What's up? What's up?
Dave, I want to thank you for joining me, man. We've known each other for a long time now.
Yeah, man.
We have been talking stories, comics, monsters. I don't know, even before we dive into you, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but you blew my mind open in circa 2006.
Oh my god. 2006, Dave.
Yeah, right? But dude, no, you kind of blew my mind a little bit because I liked that first Hellboy movie and Golden Army was on its way coming out. And you were like, have you ever read the Hellboy comics? And I was like, wait, Hellboy is a comic?
Yeah.
And you were the one to blow that whole door open of holy god, why wouldn't I have assumed it's a comic? I liked the movie, but I never looked at the credits of based on Dark Horse comic created by Mike Mignola. All of that stuff was lost on me. And you were like, yeah, it's a comic. It's great. I've been reading it for years and stuff. And
that's the best. I love hearing that.
So yeah, that was one thing way back when that of you just being hey, you like that? Have you checked this out?
So that's how long we've known each other. I was trying to figure out the math. So I know it was definitely early 2000s because it was when our buddy Dave was working at a video store, and I remember we had a cross friends group because your buddy worked there and then my buddy worked there, and we were both just movie dorks that had nothing to do and just hung out at the video store, you know. And that sounds makes us sound so old when we're we met at a DVD VHS rental store. It's oh my god, that's awesome though. That's a very cool friend origin story though. I'll take it.
I mean, right? That's that. Let's begin, man. Let's begin with you a little bit here.
Yeah.
Now, and where do you grow up? What do your parents do? Do they influence, or other family members kind of influence you being a writer and kind of loving story?
Yeah, so I grew up in the south side of Chicago in a neighborhood called Mount Greenwood, right neighbors to you guys in Beverly. Yeah, so my dad's a lifelong reader, so he always had books laying around the house. And that's something that was always just normal for our family, but then I go to other people's houses and there wasn't a book to be seen, and not even in a pretentious way, because it's my dad wasn't reading Shakespeare and Voltaire and stuff. Dude was reading Conan the Barbarian and Robert E. Howard and Lovecraft and all that stuff. So reading was always just a huge part of our family in general. So I was lucky enough just to kind of always grow up around really cool stuff. We always had comics, we always had books, we always had genre stuff. And my brother still is a hardcore reader, which is kind of cool because he kind of got me into it because we shared a room. So I would always, one of my favorite memories growing up is when he would go as a teenager, go and hang out with girls or go and do whatever teenagers were doing in the 90s. And I would play with his Spawn toys and stuff. And, he had them really specifically placed on a shelf. And I remember I didn't realize he did that purposely so he would know if I was messing with him or not. And then I remember one time I think he came home and he had the exoskeleton Spawn toy with the that cool it had a big mask thing.
Yeah. And
I think it fell on the floor and one of it broke and he flipped out on me. Which is pretty funny in retrospect. So yeah, we were always just surrounded by really cool stuff. And I just always had access to that sort of thing. And I think a lot of people's entry points with comics is having to find it, right? Having to seek it out, or they, had a friend who had all that stuff. And I think the cool thing, and not really patting myself on the back, but back to you saying the Hellboy thing, suggesting that to you. I think I was kind of the kid that introduced a lot of other kids into comics and cool stuff like that. And I don't know, to me, that's a huge honor. That's super cool. But yeah, just my dad rules, and he just always had cool stuff around and kind of just put the bug in me super early, I've always just looking at covers, and even before I couldn't read, I would just look at all these crazy paperback covers he had, and I would just be whoa, what is this, and he would have Mobius comics, and you have Michael Morak and what's the name, I forgot what the other, he reads so much, it's kind of that dude's read more books than I could ever imagine. But it's cool. Yeah, I was always just surrounded by it, and I was kind of just I don't know, just born by it, I guess. It had just a huge influence just because it was always a part of my life.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. I can tell you, I know like some of my first intro to comics in general was all of this stuff, all of those animated shows in the 90s, Batman the Animated Series, X-Men, and Spider-Man for sure. Because on those things, it was like Marvel Comics, DC Comics, and stuff on there as well.
Yeah.
And like, you know, my grandpa, actually, of all people, he was hugely influential to me. He also was the first person to put a screwdriver in my hand and was like, "Hey, go fix this." Like,
Yeah.
was like, "Hey, you're fine. You can go do this. Like, you can read.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah,
you can read. You can write. You can go unscrew this and put this back together for me and help me out here." So like, but he also like he also like used to watch like Planet of the Apes with like my the original ones like Charlton Heston and stuff like with
Dr. Zaius.
my younger brother. My mom talks about all the time about my grandpa taking them to go see Jaws originally in like 75 and stuff.
Man.
So like so like a lot of my love of like movies and like kind of movie magic and like all of that stuff come from them.
And you've always been like that too. Yeah. Like that's how we became friends, is you were just like, and it was, I think it was even like maybe not even a conscious thing. It's just like when you meet someone who's just like really passionate about something, because it's weird because like even today you'll meet people who are kind of just like, oh yeah, I kind of just like hanging out and I do this and do this. But like even like the first time I met you guys are like hardcore into movies. I'm like, these dudes rule because they just like really care about it, you know? Yeah. And I think like when you're younger, that's super important to like kind of find people who are like just really, and even just like even anything. It's like I wasn't into sports, but even someone who's just like super, super into it, like to me was like cool because it's like that person really cares about this one thing. So I think that's kind of why we hit it off, because I knew you guys were just hardcore into that. And it's like, and I think it's like right across the train tracks, you guys were over there, you know, like like little pockets of weirdos throughout our kind of like regular kind of like, you know, Irish Catholic like, kind of boring neighborhood. Like there's freaks on every block, you know, like us. So it's cool.
Yeah. Well, and like that's the beauty of it, of like just like finding your people or whatever, like, you know, again, like finding your niches and stuff, of being like, oh yeah, monsters and movies, have you, well, if you like that, have you seen this? Like that's probably one of my favorite things about like about what got us together and everything like that, is like it is that idea of like not gatekeeping or anything like that, of being like, ooh, you like this, well, I like this too, and if you like this thing, I think you'll like this thing too, and like being excited by other people's excitement.
Totally.
It's literally being at like Comic-Con or like something like that, like just that excitement of just having so many people together, just being like, I just love this stuff and I love that you do these things too, and this is so cool. So let me ask then, aside from like always kind of having this stuff around, what was there one comic, one book, one writer, one thing that you read at any point of your life that you're like, you know what, I can write, I can be a writer, like this is something I could do as like a job, or like whatever, I need to tell my stories, like what's that thing, what was that spark or whatever?
Yeah, totally. I think it's like, again, that's one of those things, I think when you're younger, you're not really conscious when stuff is kind of like blowing your mind. Like you are kind of like, whoa, you find something that like really excites you, but you're not like, it's hard to know like, hey, in like 30 years, I'm still gonna be talking about this thing, or, you know, how it changed me or whatever. And it's funny too, you mentioned Hellboy. Maybe Hellboy would be it, because it's like, even though Hellboy has this like massive fan base, and even, you know, from the jump, a lot of people read it, right? It was still pretty popular comic, but it was kind of a niche thing. It was kind of like that cross section of like pulp and comics and superhero stuff, but like, you know, mixed folklore, all that stuff. I think the cool thing with like Hellboy when it came out was like, since we were always surrounded by all these things, right? Like all like supernatural stuff and horror stuff, and like I said, like Cthulhu stuff, and, you know, we loved Indiana Jones and all this stuff that we liked. You know, Hellboy came around, and it was one of those things where we always had comics, right? We always had X-Men, we always had, you know, Batman, all that cool stuff. But like Hellboy came around, it like, I think it was one of the first like pieces of like literature that was like, this is made for me, like this is made for my family, this is like made for the Scheids, you know, because it was like all this stuff that we liked, and like you think wouldn't really make sense together, kind of like thrown in. And like even to this day, my dad's a huge Hellboy fan, and even like from the jump, we all kind of got into it at the same time, even when we were kids. So it's like my dad was this adult, you know, and my brother was, I'm trying to even think when we got into Hellboy, probably like maybe 97, 98. So I was still in grade school when that came out. I think it was like the either Chain Coffin and Other Tales or Right Hand of Doom and Other Tales. It was like just like the short story collection. And I remember, I think my brother brought it home, and my brother read it, and then my dad read it, and then of course I'm last in line, you know, and then like I got to read it, and we're all kind of freaking out about it. So it was also kind of this like family thing that we were kind of bonding without even really like, it wasn't even like a forced thing. It wasn't like, hey, let's read this together, blah, blah, blah. It's just, we all kind of already like that stuff. And like, we found this book that was like, hey, here's all this cool stuff we love, like throwing it together and creating this original thing. And it was also kind of one of those things where it was like, the art was like, you know, now Mike Mignola is like probably my favorite artist. Yeah. And like, I remember back in the day, like, I'm sure like you could say it too, when you saw it, like seeing that like Mignola art for the first time, you're kind of like, whoa, like, what is this? Yeah. You know, and not even in a bad way. You're kind of just like, you're so used to stuff looking such a specific way, especially like in the 90s. Mm-hmm. And I think just like discovering something that just felt like, I don't know, you like felt like you were part of something, like you found this cool secret thing, you know. It's like the equivalent of like discovering a cool band that you know is going to blow up in a couple of years, but you're like, whoa, this is so awesome, you know. Yeah. And I think Hellboy really kind of just like changed just my perception of like what I thought comics could do, if that makes sense. Because like I said, I had this kind of idea of what I thought comics were. Comics were X-Men, comics were Spider-Man, they were, you know, Green Lantern, all that stuff. And then suddenly like all this cool stuff that we already liked, like thrown into a blender, creating this like insane thing, like existed. And it was kind of like, wait, you could do that? Like you could make a comic that's not like Batman, you know, it's not Superman, whatever. Mm-hmm. So I think Hellboy was really like the first, and this isn't even a subconscious thing, even before I ever thought about writing anything, right? Even before being a writer was any sort of like, you know, tiny bubble in my mind to start doing. I think it's just like really just changed how I look at things. And again, I look back at that now and I'm like, yeah, like that's kind of sort of where I'm able to find my place in comics, where it's like, well, this guy like just did this completely insane different thing and it's successful and people love it, but he just didn't care. He just did his thing. And then, you know, whatever. So I think that kind of blew my mind, at least like creatively as a kid, just as like a fan. And I really don't, it's hard to say like if I would be doing this if Hellboy didn't exist, but it's also like the Hellboy comics really made me just like fall just like super in love with comics, just like, because like I said, it felt like this thing completely made for me, like all the stuff that we liked and stuff I didn't even really know I liked thrown into this one thing, you know. So I think Hellboy kind of just changed everything for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Hellboy's great.
Oh, it's the best. Yeah, and it's like you think it's a super weird thing, and then you could kind of like, especially the short stories, like you could just give to someone and be like, hey, check this out, this is cool. And people are like, whoa, this is what this is awesome, you know. It's like not as like, it's still super weird, but it's not like inaccessible enough where it's like you have to like, oh, you don't get it. It's like, dude's such a good storyteller where it's just like, you know, if you're into anything remotely monsters or Victorian or pulp or anything, it's like you'll find something cool in those books, you know.
Yeah, you definitely will. One of my things that, at least about Hellboy, I love those library editions.
Oh yeah,
they're absolutely beautiful. I have that, and then I have a hardcover of Weird Tales.
Oh yeah,
of that like collection and stuff.
Yeah.
So like that's another one that it's like, oh yeah, here, check out Weird Tales. You like monsters?
Yeah.
Check this out. You've never heard of Hellboy? Check it out.
I always
you only see the movie? Check it out. Yeah.
I always tell people like I had to get rid of all my comics, like all my books. I would just keep the Hellboy library editions. I'm like, I'm good. Maybe I'll keep Hellboy library editions. I'll keep a couple Peanuts collections, maybe some Love and Rockets, and maybe some like old Donald Duck comics or something. I'm like, I'm good. Like that's all I really need to have, you know?
Yeah. I would absolutely keep those Hellboy editions. I'd also have to keep my omnibus of The Question from.
Oh yeah.
Is it like Denny O'Neil and Dennis Cowan?
Yeah. Those are awesome.
And dude, Bill Sienkiewicz like covers The Question.
80s DC is like untouchable. Like it's just so cool.
Yeah.
Just there's something just so cool and weird about it, and so just like I feel like this is very overdone when people are like, oh, there's something so punk rock about it. But really like the whole like I don't know, things just like changed, and it was just cool. They're kind of just letting them do their thing, you know. It wasn't like, what are the fans going to think? It's just kind of like, hey, let's get some talented, you know, crazy creators and let them do their thing, you know.
Yeah, these people want to tell these stories. Well, let's let them. Let's let the creators create a little bit, and you know, like you know, we'll just let them be. And but The Question, if you've never read it, great stuff.
Yeah, those are awesome. Hell yeah,
it's so good. Now finally, or not finally, but
next I was gonna say that's a quick one. We gotta all right, man, see you later. Yeah, good stuff.
What is your what's your path to publishing then? So like Hellboy kind of got you into there being like, man, I think I kind of want to write. But
Mm.
then, like, we all go through school or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
did you go to school? Did you just start, like, after high school, just start writing? Like, what's that kind of part of your tale here, man?
Yeah. So generally speaking, like I didn't have the best experience in school. I was a pretty bad student. Most of it which is on me, but like so like at the time, like my kind of just like I don't know, like the way I looked at school was kind of like I can't wait to get out of here type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like yeah, a lot of people would talk about like, oh, I'm gonna do this college and do that. Like for me, the concept of writing for a living or whatever was never something that even crossed my mind, just because it was like something I kind of did just for like self survival. Like a lot of times it was almost like a journal without me realizing it. I would just write like these like crappy, really melodramatic like short stories. But they helped me. It was the thing that like kind of just sort of got like what was inside of me at the time and kind of just out for me to kind of just convince me that I'm not crazy. It's like this thing that I'm feeling I could do something with it instead of just internalizing it and just being like a angry drywall punching white kid from the essentially the suburbs or whatever.
Right.
So I think like generally speaking, there was never something I was ever like, oh, I should go to school for this, I should do this and this, because it was almost just kind of a hobby. It wasn't something that I was trying to like. I was just showing short stories to like my dad at the time. Really, at the time it was like my dad was one of my only like readers, right? Which bless the dude's heart, like he would be like, oh, this is so good, like blah blah blah. I remember one of like the best advice, it was not even advice, like encouragement I ever got from my dad, was like I wrote this really bad like zombie short story. It was like essentially it was like Resident Evil fan fiction. It was just like about like in like Resident Evil when you find like you pick up like a folder and it'll like be
Mm-hmm.
like journal of like a security guard and whatever.
Yeah.
It's pretty much like a rip off of one of those of like I think a dude turning into a zombie or something. But
That's awesome, though.
yeah. Like in retrospect now, I'm like, that's sick, right? Like that's cool. Like if I met a kid who did that, I'd be like, dude, that's awesome. Keep doing that. That rules. But like at the time, I was kind of just like, whatever. And I remember showing it to my dad, and my dad was like, yeah, like this was really good. He's like, some of the words that you use in here and like the way you use them, I think he said is like better than some of the authors I read. And I was like, what? Like that was super cool. And like it wasn't like an insincere thing, because my dad is very like I'm very much like my dad, but my dad's a lot more introverted than me. But like kind of like me and my dad and brother all kind of have this sort of, and sister kind of all have the same sense of humor, and we're kind of like, whatever. But like he said that, and I was like, I knew that he meant it. It wasn't like a thing where he's just like, oh, good job, Dave. Like that was cool. Like legitimately, he just said it like we're talking right now. Like buddies, kind of just like, hey man, that was cool. Hey, I like the script, whatever. And like that meant the world to me, because like I said, the dude reads,
A ton.
at the time probably reads like 5 books a day or something. He was nuts. Like he read so much stuff. And not really actually 5, but like he's probably read more books. I think he's probably read more books than anyone I've ever met. And to hear that from someone who like you really care about, and just like it's a very vulnerable thing sharing your art with somebody when you're not ready. You've been doing it forever. It's like that's why some people never get started, is because it's so horrifying, kind of like opening up and kind of doing your thing. Which, not that this this zombie short story thing was like this deeply personal thing to me, but again, it's like you get excited about something, and you don't want to like you show it to someone and be like, this sucks, and you're like, oh, I guess I'm not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
So like having that was super important to me. I totally forgot what your question was that you asked, but like how I started about writing. Yeah. Okay, so that sort of thing like really really helped, right, with like my dad kind of encouraging me. Like my dad was my first reader.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that really like changed the kind of tide of like the trajectory as far as like me really being kind of serious about like, hey, I want to keep doing this, was in 8th grade. Through the city, at the time it was Mayor Daley and his wife Maggie Daley. She had this arts program, citywide like sponsored arts program called Gallery 37, where it was like multidiscipline. It was like painting, it was like drawing, it was I think music, maybe like some other stuff. But basically they had a variety of programs you could sign up for. So it's like you could do this, or you could do whatever. And at my school in 8th grade, one of the classes was like creative writing. And I saw that, I'm like, oh, cool. Like I'm already doing this. So it's not like they're really teaching me how to do it, which they were. Like, not that I thought I was this genius at it or whatever, but like for me, it was like, I'm already doing this. Like, I'm never going to learn, like, want to learn how to play like football or something. That's just not something that interests me or something I really want to do. But like, I saw the creative writing thing and I was like, hey, cool. I'm already doing this. Let me try it out. And again, that was one of those moments where you don't realize how much something's going to kind of change your life until you kind of pull back a little bit.
Mhm.
And yeah, we would just write, we just get prompts. They'd be like, hey, write a story about this, write a story about this. And they just had these like, I don't know what you call them, teachers, coaches, whatever, who were there. And then suddenly having someone outside of my family who like knew nothing about me, had no sort of like priority to like praise my work or any sort of thing like that. Suddenly I had someone, this complete stranger being like, hey, this story you wrote, this was really cool. I like how you write this. I like how you wrote that. And that was the thing where that kind of blew my mind too, because I was like, you know, whoa, like this complete stranger also thinks this is cool. So now I'm like 2 for 2. Now I'm like, yeah, I'm hot shit. Now I could write all these other, you know, zombie stories and stuff, Resident Evil journals and files and stuff. But so that was a thing where I was like, that really kind of set the trajectory of me like, hey, I'm gonna keep doing this. Like, this is cool. People are actually digging this, right? I started posting like, do you remember like in AOL Instant Messenger?
Oh,
there was the thing where you could get called like a sub profile.
Okay.
Where it would be like a link you'd put in your profile and you'd click it, and then it would essentially be kind of like a website. But I remember I had a thing of my short stories and I had it on my sub profile. Like, this is great. Girls are gonna love this. They're gonna think I'm like sensitive and like cool and like mysterious. And I'm writing like essentially like these really kind of like sappy, corny kind of like you know, I guess you'd probably call it emo stuff, you know, like it's like I wasn't like cool or like hot enough to be like a pop punk dude. I was essentially kind of trying to do the same thing, you know, at the time. And again, that was like that really scary barrier of like sharing your art with the world, you know, like if I'm suddenly being able to like share these short stories I wrote with like, you know, these like girls who like drink in the cemetery with us on the weekends when we're in like, you know, freshman year or whatever, it was like it was another freeing thing because you're like kind of putting yourself out there more and more and more. And I think the biggest thing was you're a Beverly native, so the Beverly neighborhood in Chicago is like, for people that don't know, it's a very like kind of like artsy, cool, kind of like very Chicago neighborhood. It's like multicultural, it's cool, it's very like community focused, it's very like all about local business and art. They do an art walk every year. It's really cool.
Yeah, Beverly Arts Center.
Yeah, it's great. Shout out to Beverly Arts Center. And I remember, I don't know how I found out about it, but they had this thing called the Backstreet Journal that was essentially like a literary journal where they would like publish short stories.
Oh.
And then I think it, honestly, it might have been like, I think me and my dad might have went to Bookies, like shout out to Bookies, by the way. They might have had an ad for it. And I think we're like, whoa, cool, they're accepting short stories. And I think my dad was probably like, oh, you should maybe submit or something. Something happened. I forgot how I found out about it, either that way or just locally or whatever. Because at the time it was kind of hard to find that stuff because this was still kind of, this is probably like MySpace era. So this was still kind of, you know. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I submitted a short story, like a prose story, to this thing called Backstreet Journal. And again, complete strangers. I had no in. I didn't know anyone there.
Yeah.
Didn't know anyone, blah, blah, blah. And the story got published in like an actual thing. So it's like suddenly like I'm a published author. I got to go to the ceremony. I got to read the short story live, all that. I would be mortified to read that thing now. But like I needed that, you know. It was this thing where, you know, all these people just saw me as this person. They don't know me as Dave, the kind of, you know, bad student, kind of troublemaker or whatever. They saw him like, hey, this is like this cool, like creative, this guy wrote this short story you're about to hear. And that kind of just changed everything because that was suddenly I'm a published author. Now it's like, now I got the fever, you know, and now it just kind of snowballed from there.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. Hell yeah. It was awesome. And it's shout out to the Beverly Arts Center. It was Grace was the one who organized it. So that changed my life. So if any of them are listening, yeah, that was the thing where I realized that was an opportunity. That's not hard to do, right? That's to create something to kind of showcase talented people in your neighborhood and community and all that. And for me, I never lose touch of like the importance of like putting people on and shouting people out and giving people a shot. Cause I wouldn't be where I was if I didn't have other people taking a chance on me, you know, and that's really what it's all about, is using your platform to, you know, bring other people up, I guess, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So aside from then like that local publishing and stuff, what else then do you do? Like, do you on your path to then getting into like comics and like kid lit and all that? Like, are you just writing short story after short story, submitting them to like websites, making your own? I mean, you've got your own website and stuff that you have.
Yeah.
So like, is that what you're doing, or are you building like a little creative team here to try and make pitches and stuff happen?
So that was the weird thing too. It's like with the comic thing, I kind of just like fell into. It was kind of like a I don't know, I guess what we call it, like a lot of people call it a happy accident. It was something you didn't plan on, but then it like ended up being like this awesome thing. Um I think it was just maybe just because I'm like a doofus and I just never thought of it. But like it was like I'm already writing. I love comics. Like what? Like why am I not making comics? And there was this like light bulb moment where I was like, oh, like okay, maybe just do this, this, and this. So yeah, a lot of it was just like self-publishing my own stuff. Like my buddy Matt Fagan at the time there's this comic store called Brainstorm.
Okay.
When I moved to at the time I was living in Bucktown, like a northwest side of Chicago, and I was just hanging out at the comic store, and I knew Matt drew. So one day I just got the courage to be like, hey man, like I have these like we both like horror movies and we both have make each other laugh. We have these same sense of humor. So I was like, hey man, like what's just like would you be into like maybe drawing this comic for me? And again, there was another one of these like crazy moments. And as far as like the kidlit thing, I kind of just fell into it. I think just my sensibilities and just my tastes and just like the things that interest me, I kind of just naturally kind of fell into doing stuff for kids. It was never this planned out thing, you know. Also, like if you would have told me in like if you would have told like I'm trying to think of like the worst possible version of me as a kid. Like if you would have told like freshman year Dave, hey man, like one day you're gonna be like hanging out with teachers and librarians and like encouraging like all it's like no dude, I never would have thought, you know, I would have I would have done that, you know. But I look at it now and realize how like important that is to be able to, you know, kind of create better experiences for people because I think like I didn't have the best experience in school, but being able to like you know, like making comics for kids, right? The idea of like growing up as a kid's like this really hard, difficult thing, right? But being able to be kind of like part of making kids' day better, maybe just making them laugh a little bit in school or whatever, even if it's just like for a minute, like to me, that's super important because like all the comics and books and movies and stuff that I loved as a kid gave me so much comfort and kind of just like got me through a lot of like gnarly times, you know? Yeah. And now I kind of have this platform to kind of be that sort of comfort for kids. And like to me, that was like, again, here we are at another mind blowing moment where it was like, you know, that's what it's all about. And most creative people you meet kind of are chasing that sort of thing of like, you know, I don't know, like leaving the world better than how you found it, you know, and kind of just like being, what do they say? Like being the person you needed when you were a kid, you know, like it's like, it's something you can do. It's a process, but it's something you could like explore in your work and stuff like that. So, that really kind of solidified like the idea of like why I really love doing what I'm doing with like, you know, writing for young audiences and stuff.
Awesome. Because, you know, like at least like the kid lit thing, that was a question submitted to us on Facebook by Ed. Ed Norton.
Shout out Ed Norton and shout out Chris Patira too. I love that he shouted me out in the first one, so I miss Chris and I'm glad to hear he's driving. Chris, another one of our buddies.
So just a side note about Chris and did you read Savage Sword?
No, I need to pick it up. I was actually probably going to go this weekend to grab it.
You'll love it. You'll love it. It's great. John knocks it out. John Arcudi knocks out the main story, and then they've got a couple of like they've got a short, and they got a bunch of great stuff in there. It's like it's magazine stuff. It's awesome. It's awesome.
Yeah, I think for people who aren't familiar with this sort of stuff, another one of our buddies that we grew up with is like editing the Conan the Barbarian comics, which is insane. Because again, it's this weird little group of like dudes that used to hang out in video stores and we used to talk about like Conan the Barbarian and like Jurassic Park and stuff. Like we're all doing our own creative thing now too. So it's like literally like this is sort of proof of like find your kind of group because it's like that stuff matters, like finding like-minded people and stuff.
Yeah, find your people for sure. Yeah. Oh man, that's But so you then have you've got Spooky Sleepover.
Oh yeah,
which is like one of my favorite things that I got because I got this when we were up in Michigan. Like I was up there for a different job for a training, and you were like, "Hey, I'm going up to this art festival up in Ann Arbor," and I was like, "I'm going to be in Detroit. How far away is that?
Yeah,
like 35 minutes. Okay." Yeah. Like, so I went up there, and that was great.
That might have been the first time we reconnected after a while too, right? Because we were like. Yeah. We were like buddies just on like MySpace and stuff or whatever, and like Facebook we kept in touch, but that was like I think that's the first time we like saw each other in like forever, I think.
Yeah, that was the first time in that was definitely a first time in a few years that we had reconnected and everything. And I mean, I remember I picked that up from you. I picked up some Wrapped Up.
Oh yeah.
Love that. Wrapped Up, man. That was such a special story for me, like reading that up there in those 2 weeks and stuff. I think I
Yeah.
even have like your Castlevania one
Oh
shot.
yeah. Yeah.
That's all just, oh man, so great. But let's actually talk about some of that. What is,
Yeah.
so like with Wrapped Up, man,
Hmm.
how does Wrapped Up and Agents of Slam come together?
Hmm.
Because you worked with that with Scoot.
Yeah, it was Scoot, our buddy Scoot McMahon. Yeah, I think so the cool thing with Scoot is like, again, kind of about the kind of like concept of like finding your people. um we had a lot of mutual friends, and we kind of just like met serendipitously through like so there's a store here in Chicago, like right outside of Chicago, called Oh Yeah Comics. That's owned by Art and Franco, who do Tiny Titans for DC Comics and a bunch of other million amazing comics. They've been kind of like our mentors like forever, and I love those guys to death. And they kind of did this cool thing of like, um they had a comic shop, but they do these events, and they kind of did this, what every comic store kind of aspires to, right, is to create a community, create a space for people to hang out and talk about stuff and argue and do whatever, like this just cool thing to like, you feel like you're somewhere with people that care about what you care about. So I met Scoot through that, just kind of just being like a fan and doing comics already. And it was one of those things where you like quickly like realize just like how, I don't know, like I think with me and Scoot, the best way to describe it is just like chemistry. We kind of just like feed off of each other. I always say that we kind of share a brain sometimes, but it literally is this thing where we kind of just like always know what's going to make each other laugh, and like kind of like um I don't know, we just have this like really cool like genuine bond, this really just like I don't know, he's just a great friend of mine. And yeah, I think like we got the opportunity basically to work on a short story, which I was really excited for, because Scoot was doing a bunch of short stories for All Yeah Comics, and obviously I was a huge fan of Art and Franco.
Yeah.
But like for me, the Art and Franco stuff was great, and then the Scoot stuff was always just like awesome too. I was like, where did this guy come from? Like, he's awesome. There's so much like confidence in his work, and even early on, like the early All Yeah stuff, he's just like such a great cartoonist. And like he wasn't and no disrespect for other people who work on those books. There's a lot of other amazing, talented people worked on those books, but like Scoot stuff just like stand out so well because it complemented the sort of sensibilities that Art and Franco were doing with All Yeah Comics, where it's kids comics, but it's also, they always say it's all ages comics, right? It's stuff that anyone could read. You could read with your kid. You could, it's just funny, good,
Yep.
just good comics or whatever. And Scoot stuff like fit that, but also had this whole other sort of dynamic to it where I was just kind of fascinated by. And then I'm sure we just started by just joking around and saying like stupid stuff to each other and making each other laugh. And like for me, that's what's important. It's like we try to always, just as much as we have fun hanging out and goofing around, we always want to make sure that there's a ton of that in the work that we create. Like we want our stuff to be just as fun as, I don't know, hanging out and whatever, hanging out with your friend. And that's something that has taught me a lot about comics, as far as like, you could read a comic and kind of realize someone was like really having fun with it. Someone really enjoyed writing this or drawing this, or even movies. Someone really enjoyed shooting this or writing this, whatever, and I think that's why me and Scoot are such a great team, especially on kid stuff, because we're having fun with it and we think it's fun. We think it's goofy. We laugh at the jokes. So hopefully other people will, like, so it's just like, there's fun in that. It's not just like when you're writing stuff for kids, it's like horrifying, right? I don't have kids, and I haven't been a kid in 20 something years, or whatever. So it's like a lot of people lose touch of that. Like, thankfully I was one of those people who's kind of hang on to like that sort of, my childhood sensibility, whatever. And like, I think it's just really important when you're making it to just be having fun with it and believing in it. Even like, that's funny to say with something like Wrapped Up, where it's about like gorillas crashing through walls and like, stoned wizards and, like killer babies and sentient pizza guys and stuff, but like we generally like really like that. Like that was like, hey, like basically the process of Wrapped Up. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The process of Wrapped Up when me and Scoot were working on it was like, hey, wouldn't this be funny if we did this? Hey, what if we did this? Like it literally was kind of just that. And Agents of Slam was cool because it was kind of like an inverse of that, where it was like Scoot brought the idea to me and then we developed it together. So I think it's obviously a different tone than Wrapped Up as far as like structure, because Wrapped Up is all short stories and kind of like Saturday morning cartoons, right? That was very conscious of like, we just want really funny. We want to tell as much funny stories as possible with this.
Wrapped Up, I love that breakdown of it. Actually, if you calling it Saturday morning cartoons, like that's that. I mean, you're the writer, of course you would be able to describe it the best. Yeah, man, Wrapped Up just always just made me smile, because I was like, oh my god, all the monsters are together. They're on the wacky adventures.
Like, it's all like, everything that's in there is stuff that we think is cool. None of it's like us like, oh god, or when people like, we were kind of writing it, you kind of write in a vacuum with something like with Wrapped Up. Like, we didn't have fans, no one really knew our stuff, whatever, so we were just cranking those out. So those are very much just like, the stuff that we think is cool or whatever. But like, I think it's just like with stuff like that, it's very important for us to just like have fun with that. And I think, again, like, not patting ourselves on the back with Wrapped Up, but I legitimately think that Wrapped Up was like ahead of its time as far as the types of things that we were doing at that time wasn't nearly as popular as far as in like the direct comics market. And I feel like if Wrapped Up just came out recently, just as like a new series, like nobody knew about it, I do feel like it would be, have like more appeal, just because it was like, I don't know, just the audience is so much more aware of like these types of things, with like bookstores, comic stores, and all that stuff. Like, the kids comics boom is this huge thing, but at the time when we were doing it, it was like, I think we were just like a little bit ahead of our time with that sort of thing. And then like right after we did that, that's when everything like blew up, But for us, like, the cool thing about Wrapped Up is like, for that to be like our calling card at the time, being like, hey, this is the kind of books that we want to make, all that, like, that's like so much, that's us, we show that to people. That's like, I'm to this day, I'm still really proud of like the work we done on that book. Because it's like,
it's great.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it's like this little time capsule, but like this cool, weird, zany thing that me and my friend made with some of our other friends, and it's like, to me, that's always going to be like, still going to mean a lot to me, as far as like I don't look back on it and be like, oh, like, I look back at that and be like, dude, this was like a time before no one really knew who we were, but we were having fun and we created this thing and it's out in the world. And Wrapped Up was awesome.
Agents of Slam. That I would say, like, I don't want to say like your second work together, but like your second book, man, Agents of Slam, wrestling fan. Like, if you're a fan of wrestling, if you liked it, I mean, we talk about the 90s because that's where like we grew up. That's where wrestlers of the 90s are wrestlers and stuff. And so like, wherever you grew up, if you've been a wrestling fan from the 70s till now, like whatever it is, you got to check out Agents of Slam. You got to check it out. It's great. It's great. It's so awesome.
We love it. Yeah.
And I remember like giggling reading Agents of Slam the first time. And I was like, Jessica, it's them. They did it. They did it. And she's like, what are you talking about? I'm like,
that's what's funny too. Is like, here and there we'll get stuff where we'll have people who like, because at the end of the day, here's the thing, like, we're me and Scooter like huge wrestling fans, right? And but like we weren't like, hey, we're gonna make this comic for wrestling fans, right? Like, obviously that's in the back of our head. We're like, that's cool, but we're like, what does a Dave and Scoot wrestling comic look like? So it's like, we already had the track record of being able to do Wrapped Up together, and we kind of already developed like our creative voices together and kind of like realized like how we like to work together and all that. But I think like one of the first things early on when we were making Agents of Slam, where we're like, all right, what didn't we really get to do a lot in Wrapped Up? We're like, all right, we didn't get to do a lot of action in Wrapped Up. Like, there is some action in Wrapped Up and there's some like cool, like funny scenes, but we're like, we really want to do some like cool action stuff, right? And also, it was super important for us, and people come up to us and tell us this, which is like, I feel like so rare when you like set out to do something and people actually registers and it works. It's like kind of a miracle. Is that like, if you love wrestling, there's probably something in this book that you'll like, right? The spirit of like what wrestling meant to us as a kid is kind of in that book, right? But also on the flip side, if you're a kid who's never watched a wrestling match in their life, they should be able to read that and understand and be like, hey, here's like, this could still be like a fun comic for them. Like, we didn't want to alienate anyone, because I think like, not that I ever want to set out to be like, oh, right, this is a comic everyone's going to love. You could do it. Like, you could never think that way, right?
Yeah.
But also, it's kind of scary, kind of the balance of like, some wrestling people, like wrestling fans, are like so hardcore that like live and breathe it, right? But again, I never wanted to like make it like too referential, where like you have to be like a hardcore wrestling fan like us, like in our 30s and stuff, to understand all that, like there's so much stuff within that book. And I think this is like being a kid of like the 90s that like really kind of taught me this, like something like The Simpsons is like you could be referential but still not get the references, and the jokes are still funny. Like think about how many like Simpsons episodes we probably saw that were like from the 80s and we didn't know what any of these references were, but the jokes were still funny, like,
Right.
and then you see it as an adult, you're like, oh, that's what that is. That's what they're talking about. So still being able to tell like a funny joke that references something, but you don't have to get the reference to kind of get it or whatever. So like Agents of Slam has a lot of like wrestling stuff in it that like hardcore wrestling fans are like, oh, whoa, cool, this, and this. But like little kids will be like, hey, here's just these cool characters and cool costumes, and they're doing these like crazy moves and stuff. And that was something that was really important to us, though. Like we wanted to make sure that it was accessible to like non-wrestling fans, but also having this amazing chance of like converting kids into being like, hey, let me check out more wrestling. Like to us, wrestling meant the world to us. So it was like so cool knowing, again, with like comics, being like, hey, our book was the first comic they've read, or like, hey, I read Agents of Slam and it was really funny and I checked out wrestling, now I love it. It's like that means so much to us because that's so cool, because it's like, we're like getting kids into something that really meant a lot to us as kids, so it's like, I don't know, it's like this kind of cyclical thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Gonna ask you, so one thing I do want to ask is, do you meet Miranda Harmon via Wrapped Up?
No, so
the reason why I ask, she did art, or at least it could be a different Miranda Harmon, but she's credited as a backup artist.
And Wrapped Up.
And Wrapped Up. So I didn't know if that was like, if you were like, oh, hey, we hit it off too, and like then
well, see, that was part of it. So the cool thing with like the kind of like weird double-edged sword of Wrapped Up was like, they like put it in single issues, they like serialized it.
Yeah.
So like nowadays, if I realize if I'm doing a kids comic, I probably won't try to do the whole monthly comic thing with that, because kids don't really read like that, or they'll pick something up every couple months, whatever. They're not going to read like a monthly book or whatever. But since it was a monthly book, we had the opportunity of having, I wanted to use it as an opportunity to work with people that I admire and stuff, work I really like. So obviously like me and Scoot did the main story, which was always like the, that was, I think those are usually 18-page stories and Wrapped Up, like the main stories.
Yep.
And then we would have like 6 pages to do with like backup artists and all that. And I basically kind of just made like a dream team of like, hey, I'd love to work with this person, this person, this person. And Miranda was on there because I just knew Miranda through just kind of the comics world, doing like this convention Cake in Chicago. It's like an alternative comics expo thing. And me and Miranda had a ton of other mutual friends. So like I was already aware of her work and I always loved it because it was just like, I mean, how could you not like Miranda's work? Like it's amazing, but like it was just really like I don't know. It's something that like it like spoke to me. I just saw it and just something like I gravitate myself toward just any sort of like, I don't know, like little animals and like Richard Scarry, like in Cars, or like little guys and like little outfits, stuff like that. Like there's just like a really cool charm to that, and that type of art always is so inviting me. When there's like Miranda will post like a little drawing of like like a little rabbit in like an apron or something, whatever. And it's like, there's like a story there. It's not just like a, hey, look at this cool drawing. Like there's so much just like life in her drawings, there's always just some sort of thing. And there's a really cool, this is a long aside, sorry.
No problem.
But there's a really cool thing though, too, with like how we sort of came up doing like self-published comics, like doing like Cake and Zine Fest and all these like self-published things. A ton of people that kind of came up doing that, like, Xeroxing their own comics and selling them at Zine Fest and all that. Like a lot of these people like became comic artists, like doing kids comics, kids cartoons, like Adventure Time, regular show, just much as like Simpsons, a lot of it was like comic guys early in. But like all these, like that era of Cartoon Network with like Adventure Time, regular show, all that, like all those people who were like storyboarding and all that, those are all like zine people, those are all cartoonists, those are all like comics people, so that world was already kind of just this like similar sort of thing. So it was kind of just like pulling that sort of thing, and I think I was just like, I hit up Miranda and it was just like, hey, yeah, there he is right there, look at it, there he is. And I was just like, hey, do you want to do this short story? I really like your art. And it's like, cartoonists are never going to turn down, a paycheck. None of us, we all kind of need money, so
right.
Suddenly having this opportunity to be like, to like hire people was awesome, because it was like, gave me this chance to work with a lot of cartoonists I really admire. And Yeah, and then like the Miranda thing was just the most effortless thing in the world. Like she just gets it, So that was awesome. That was like I was so excited. Like even if we never got through the Mayor Goodboy books, the fact that I was able to do like a 6-page story with her was like awesome. But that was just this effortless cool again, like with the Scoot thing, it just felt like natural. We just had this kind of like connection.
Yeah, it made sense or whatever.
Yeah, I think just like my sensibilities and my storytelling and just her storytelling and her art and all that and just everything she brings to the table, it just like makes me look so good. I think like I don't think she gets enough credit for that because I never shut up, obviously, but like Miranda's like absolutely the secret weapon with Mayor Goodboy. Like just the way she brings that story to life was just unbelievable.
It's fantastic. I mean, Scoot and I'm hoping Miranda. I'm hoping I can get both of them on here.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, man. Like I remember when you were like, "Dog is a mayor." It's like I'm in. I'm in.
It sells itself. Yeah, it sells itself. Yeah. That was really. I always joke too that I did like a library talk recently where I was talking to these kids and I was like, like sometimes I'll just like write stuff down. Like if you ever have an idea, just like write it down. And I remember from like 10 years ago at like 2:00 in the morning, there was like a thing that was like dog mayor on my notes app. And it's like, didn't know what it meant for 6 years. And then one day I was like, wait a minute, I think I have a good idea. And I opened my phone, it says dog mayor. I'm like, I got it, Mayor Goodboy. And then it kind of just like, and that's how it happens, like people romanticize the idea of, I'm not one of those people that wake up in the middle of the night and like write something down on a piece of paper. Like it's usually, I'm taking a dump or I'm at work or I'm like doing whatever, it's like right? The most inopportune time when like inspiration strikes me, So you got to be ready to like absorb that in some way. And like, I have a really bad like short-term memory. So it's like, I got to write that stuff down, even if it doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
That's on me. I got to figure it out later if it makes sense. But yeah, that's how that came about.
I'm lost without my notes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tell you, I've just got everything in there. So many different things. And yeah, like every idea that I'm like cooking up or whatever. It's like, it may not even be something I'm ready to pitch anyone yet. Like, especially like Colin or Crowley.
Yeah.
Cause there's a lot of times where I'm just like, all right, guys, we're doing it. And they're like, what?
And I'm sure like if yours or anything like mine, if anyone saw that, they'd be like, dude, what is this? Like, this makes no sense. Like I remember this weird thing happened where this was like, I'm trying to think of what era this was. This might've been, I think this was before Wrapped Up. So this is like the self-publishing days. I had a notebook with just a million like different script ideas and whatever nonsense. Yeah. And I left it on a train and I had one of those like, oh, if you find this, call this number. And then I remember I got this like call from this like woman who found it and like left this like 5-minute long voicemail, like talking about, oh, I read this stuff and it's so good. Although I'm like, I can never meet this lady. Like I'm just, that thing's gone. Like if that makes sense to her, like I know for me as a person, like it was nonsense, like it was nuts. I'm like, if this makes sense to anyone on earth, like this is a crazy person. I'm like, not like, we're not trying to do that. I'm not meeting with that. I remember getting that voicemail. I was like, dude, what is this? They're like, yeah, they read all these like weird, bad monster ideas and all this like stuff that like probably made no sense at all. But like suddenly this person's like, oh, this is great. I read every bit of it. But I'm like, I cannot. That thing's gone. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So those are some of your original kind of like early on kind of current going stuff. Let's talk about some of your licensed work. Because aside from just like doing your own original stories, which I always want, or like your own creative works or whatever, you've also been able to work with licensed stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've worked with Trolls, Avatar: The Last Airbender, and dude, did a Star Wars guy.
Yeah, that's still like, let's see it again. I still can't like seeing Scheidt on a Star Wars comic is still kind of just like, dude, what? Like, what? Yeah. Hopefully, we'll be seeing more of that in the future. Hint, hint. We'll see.
That's awesome.
But maybe we'll see my name on one of those again. We'll see.
Ooh.
Yeah.
But so let's see. Star Wars was done with IDW. Mm-hmm. Was Trolls done with Boom, or was that
Trolls was through Paper Cuts?
Oh, Paper Cuts. Okay.
Yeah.
And
which
then,
was like
Avatar was Dark Horse.
Dark Horse, yeah.
So let's start with Trolls, because that is actually Sloane's new favorite character right now. It's just Trolls in general.
Yeah.
She loves Trolls. How does that happen? How does getting like licensed work for you? Like, did you have like did you take like your old little trolls like toys from like us in the 90s or whatever having them and like because that's how my first storytelling was playing with my toys and being like, hey, you do this and you do that. But like for Trolls, for Star Wars, for Avatar, do you have your own original story that you do like a spec script kind of, and that you submit and they're like, hey, or whatever? What is that? What do you do?
Okay, yeah. So the crazy thing actually is like most of those are pretty similar as far as like the preliminary stuff. It's like, so you have an editor who hits you up, was like, hey, we have this book, do you want to pitch on it, whatever. My process specifically is I will just put a bunch of just like quick kind of like elevator pitches where I'll do like, I'm kind of a masochist with stuff like that, so I'll do like, they'll ask for like 3 ideas and I'll send them like 12 just to be safe,
Yeah.
But like for me, it's like that's going to increase my chances of like, hopefully, the more I send, the more chance I have to getting something picked, whatever. But also I think it's kind of like just showing them I could just crank stuff out if I need to, as far as like whatever. So they all pretty much work similar as far as like let's see, for example, okay, so like for Avatar, for example, that was one of those where I like already loved the cartoon, I already saw a bunch of it, I already knew the characters there, everyone has those characters in their head, as far as like, you're kind of in this, I feel like it's an overused term, the sandbox, but it literally is this thing. It's like when you do get to work on these really cool, great properties, it's like they did such a great job with the cartoon. It's like it's not hard to come up with more stories for those characters, because it's like they did such a great job of like bringing those characters to life or whatever. So that's definitely the cool thing that's like the strength of getting to work on licensed stuff. But it's also horrifying because it's like if really talented people worked on that too, you're kind of in the shadow of like, oh no, like with the Avatar stuff, it's like having to like work on the same books as like Gene Yang and all these other like amazing authors. But yeah, with that I sent like a ton of ideas. I think I said probably something like 12 like short stories, because thankfully that book was short stories, so it's just like send us a bunch of like little whatever. So with the Avatar stuff, Dark Horse will look through it. They kind of know what they're looking for, but then Dark Horse I think first sends it to Brian and David, the creators of Avatar, which was again crazy because they are like directly involved with like everything.
That's awesome.
And they like tweak some stuff. They're like, hey, how about this? How about this? How about this? But they give you good direction. It's not like, hey, this sucks, blah blah blah. They like give you pointers, like, hey, here's probably maybe how we'll handle this. What do you think of this? And then they kind of give you like a softball, and then you could just whatever. Like specifically the one story I did, the Scarecrow for Avatar. I think I created a different monster in that, and then they were like, hey, how about instead of this, the creatures in it are raccoon crows, because in Avatar there's a lot of like weird kind of like like combined creatures. I don't know what you call that. Like there's like but they're like, yeah, what about raccoon crows, or was it raccoon crows? It was something like that. God, that was so long ago since I wrote that. But they thought of that idea, but now it's like in like the Avatar wiki, whatever. It's like I was the one who like was the first person to tell these stories of like I created the raccoon crows, even though it was Brian and whatever.
It was a note from them. That's awesome though.
Yeah, but it was cool though. They gave me a note, and then it's like that's the stuff that when it works great is because it's like, who knows that better than them? These like amazing storytellers, So like for me, there's no ego with that. It's like I already know that those dudes are amazing storytellers, so I'm not gonna like stress about like, oh well, I want to do it this way. It's like, no, this is their book. You can't really have an ego when you're working on licensed stuff, Like there's pushback, right? You could try to argue your point or whatever, but you can't be like, this is my thing, this story. It's like, no, like that's someone else's story. So you got to be like cool with that, So you can't really have an ego with stuff like that with, licensed stuff. That's a quick way to just get blacklisted if you're just like difficult to work with and stuff, And like, why would you? It's not your book, And that's not even being a jerk. It's just like, they're hiring you to tell a story in this universe. So it's like, you got to do right by the fans, because the fans like a certain type of thing with this. So it's like, you're kind of, just focus on that wavelength or whatever. So the Star Wars stuff was also like anthology. And I had a little bit of guidance with that, which something like Star Wars, I appreciate so much, because when I originally got asked to like pitch Star Wars, like I'm a lifelong Star Wars fan, right? Like I was Darth Vader for Halloween. All of us are, our whole generation. We were obsessed with it. Special editions, prequels. Like we were kids when those came out, they meant the world to us. So like for me, I have this weird sort of thing with like certain things. I'm like, am I better off just being like a fan of it? Or do I want to try to get a peek behind the curtain and like work on something or whatever? But it's like, I never want to, you hear horror stories about people that work on huge properties that they, appreciate, whatever. So it's like, I had this thing in the back of my head where I was like, oh no, I'm like, maybe like I'll get a peek behind the curtain and I don't want Star Wars ruined for me or whatever. You know, like if I could travel back in time to that part of Dave, I'd just shake him on the shoulder and be like, dude, blah, blah, blah. Like you're good, you can do this, you can write Star Wars.
You're fine.
So there's a little bit of growing pains as far as like me getting in the right mind space for that. But the cool thing was like Lucasfilm basically gave us like a prompt. They're like, here's a bunch of stories, character ideas. We need this. We need, you know, this wasn't specific, but like, hey, maybe we need bounty hunter stories, or we need Jawa stories, or we need Luke stories, whatever. When you do an anthology book, something like Star Wars, like of course people are going to pitch Vader, people are going to pitch Han Solo, like, you know what I mean? Like, of course that's the popular one. So if I had to give any advice, if you are pitching, you know, like these bigger books, if you're pitching a Star Wars book, Spider-Man book, like try to do something cool where it's not just like the same type of thing everyone else is doing. You know, if that makes sense, you know, like maybe try to find like a character that people don't care about nearly as much and then like do your thing, you know, like, cause you get more wiggle room that way. And of course everybody wants to tell a Darth Vader story or whatever, you know? So I sent them a bunch of story ideas, and sometimes when I'm pitching too, I'll send like a kind of a crazy, like they're never going to pick this one, like an idea where it's just like, maybe I'll try something weird just to feel it out, whatever. Of course, that's the one they picked, which was awesome, where I was able to bring back two of the characters from those Galaxy of Fear middle grade novels Star Wars used to do. They were like Star Wars Goosebumps books. And like I just realized no one ever brought those back, and like I love those books as a kid, and they were kind of like lost to time for a little bit. And like I was like, I wonder if they're gonna let me bring them back. Wouldn't that be cool if I could brag about being like, yeah, I brought those characters back, like blah blah blah. And they let me do it. Like I got notes from people at Lucasfilm, like, yeah, that's cool, that sounds good. We haven't used those characters in a while. Yeah, you could do that. Just maybe do this instead of this. And then I did, and it's like, you know, here we are. So far, that's my little contribution to Star Wars, is being able to bring those characters back.
It's so awesome.
It is. It's awesome. It's cool because I love those characters as a kid. It wasn't like you know,
right.
Yeah. So and then the Trolls thing was crazy because it was like the movie wasn't even out yet, and they're like, we can't show you anything, we can't really tell you anything about it, but you still have to write stories for it. It's like, what? Like I wasn't used to working that way.
Yeah.
So I basically worked off a style guide where they basically sent me a thing of like character breakdowns, like here's this character, here's how they look, you know, they like this, this, and this, and all that. So I was kind of writing blind in the dark. And it worked out too, because it's, again, the characters they created in that movie are, you know, kind of full of life and pretty developed and kind of have a very unique voice, each character. You know, say what you will about people would have this, you know, trolls, whatever, like, at least I've seen, I didn't see the other movies. The first movie is great though. I liked it. Also, like, I can't believe I can admit this on the internet, but like I went after the fact, after we wrote all these stories, I wrote like, you know, 3 or 4 books of those Trolls comics. I remember seeing the movie and I got like really emotional. I was like tearing up, and I was acting like it was this thing I created or something. But it kind of was though, because I spent so much time with these characters, you know, like in my room and in coffee shops writing these short stories, and then suddenly you're seeing them in the film. Maybe this is like a Stolen Valor thing, like it has nothing to do with me, but it was like a kind of really funny, weird, coming to terms with what you're working on type moment or whatever. But yeah, I cried a little bit watching the Trolls movie, and I'm surprised I didn't get kicked out. They didn't think I was like a weirdo or something.
Nah, man, you just found your true colors, like Branch did at the end there. You're fine.
Yeah, it was cool though, man. It was a cool opportunity, and it was like I tried to do it. You know the movie Troll 2, like considered like one of the worst movies of all time.
Yeah.
I tried to slip Troll 2 joke in it, but the editor caught it. In Troll 2, the whole thing is like they show up in this town called Nilbog, and then eventually they realize, oh my god, Nilbog is goblin backwards. And I tried, I think I put in the directions like, oh yeah, in the background there's like a sign that says Nilbog, and the editor's like, oh, there's no goblins in Trolls Worlds. Like someone from DreamWorks like caught it. I was like, do they know? Did they see Troll 2? Did they get what I'm trying to do? So I was this close to getting a Troll 2 reference in the Trolls comics, but that's not going to stop me from doing that. I always sneak stuff in now. So
right.
But that was extremely funny. We're like, oh, it was just a really like matter of fact note from DreamWorks, was like, oh, there's only trolls, there's no goblins in this Trolls world. Sorry, you got to take this out. Well, at least I tried.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So now I want to talk about Time Traveler's Tales.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
That's your current run-in.
Yeah.
Right now, monthly release. We've got 4 issues out. Right. It's based off of Carl Jacobs' Tales from the SMP. Right.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And so start it. How'd you meet Carl? How'd you get involved with this?
Yeah.
I know that Avatar was published by Dark Horse, so it was people at Dark Horse like, hey, got this guy Dave.
Yeah. That's actually exactly how it happened. It was like so I didn't know Carl before this, right? I wasn't super familiar with, like, just because I don't know, just I didn't really know what he's doing or whatever. And I got a blind email basically from Dark Horse one day because I've worked on, you know, a couple things with them before, and like I remember getting an email from them and I was like, yeah, you know, we have this project we think you might be perfect for. You know, this influencer wants to do a comic, and immediately most people when they see influencer, and this was early on, right? This is my perspective on this has changed like quite a bit. So I initially saw the influencer, I'm like, oh no, like what is this? Like, am I gonna do it? Do they want me to do a comic with like Logan Paul or something? I'm like, I don't like I was like, oh what? I was like, all right, let's see like what this is. And then the second email, they're like, oh, here's this, you know, here's this guy Carl Jacobs. He, you know, does these like really cool story RPG sessions with his friends and like all this stuff too. I was like, no, this is like cool. This is like stuff that I would have done as a kid, you know. It's like it's the way it was framed initially, it just sounded like there was this thing that they were just like hiring someone for or whatever. But like the cool thing about Carl's audience, which shout out to all the honkers out there, like they're awesome, right? And they're all into the same stuff. Like they all love comics, they love manga, they love video games, like all the stuff that I'm into, like they're already into it. So it wasn't this thing where I'm like trying to like, you know, embarrass myself and try to look cool and young or whatever, you know. Like it was already just this like really cool audience that's just like super down for comics and manga and anime and storytelling and, you know, internet culture and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, we just basically I guess they showed Carl a bunch of my stuff, like a couple of different authors, like, hey, what about these guys, and I guess Carl was into my stuff, which shout out to Carl.
Yeah.
And yeah, like the second we actually got to interact and we like zoomed in, kind of just like, you know, talked to her, I was like, dude, this guy rules. Like he's cool. He's just like a cool normal dude who happens to be this like superstar, you know, like, which is even like super cool to me because it's like it really gives me this perspective of you know, just younger people in general, how they're engaging in media. You know, it's not just like this is how kids are watching stuff nowadays. This is how they engage with this. This is their philosophy on storytelling. You know what I mean? Like I've learned so much from just like being adjacent to that audience and kind of just seeing what they're into, you know. And like me as someone who predominantly does stuff for like a younger audience, I think it helped out a ton because it's like, again, it's the same stuff. It's like the same sort of thing I'm doing now. I'm telling stories for people, but it's like just this different kind of avenue, you know. Like it's like they're all in the same stuff we're into or whatever. So yeah, we just kind of just got friendly and just started talking and started developing the thing. And I don't know, I've been really proud of all the stuff we're doing with Kelly Nicole Matthews, Kicking Shoes, and Joe Metgill and Carl, and everyone has been doing, you know, I don't know, I feel like we've been doing some really cool, really fun comics, and the fans are digging it. They seem to be into it, you know, and we're having a lot of fun with it. So I don't know, I'm really grateful for the gig. It's been really cool. It's been really fun. And the audience has been like, it's horrifying being like the outsider suddenly, you know what I mean? Suddenly,
Yeah.
Where like I kind of had on my comic crowd, then suddenly the idea of like suddenly I'm thrown into this other fan base, but like all the fans and everything have like been so inviting and so cool and so chill, you know. So it's like I'm very thankful that they're, you know, into what we're doing, you know, and like inviting me into their, you know, world that they really care about, you know. It's really special.
And also letting you play, you know, like
appreciating totally
that like you're playing there and what.
Yeah, because they live and breathe that stuff, you know. So it's like you know, they've definitely made me feel really welcome very, very quickly, which is like all you could ask for with something like that, you know, working with like a huge fandom like that.
I mean, to be fair, like like Time Traveler Tales is great. I've loved it. And I mean, the 4 issues that we've got out, like, man, you've got like video game nuds in there. You've got like issue 2's like love story that they have in it is like just fantastic. Like,
thank you.
That was awesome. Like, especially for you know what? Like, I laugh because I'm thinking of Nick Offerman here when he's like because what it is there is it's a queer love story, but it's a love story nonetheless. Like,
totally, yeah.
Like and so like I want to call it out because like it's great that we're getting that representation, but at the same time, like I feel weird that we have to call it out. It's also just a love story.
Yeah,
but
totally.
The thing that I loved about it, though, probably most, was the end with the dad.
Oh yeah.
And how instead of the dad being so like dismissive or like pushing him away or anything, he was just like, I just want you to be happy.
Yeah, totally.
If this is I just want you happy. Like
Yeah.
anything else is noise.
Yeah.
Anything else is noise. I just want you. And I was like, that was a really great kind of different ending to a story like that. Because
Yeah.
usually you don't get that kind of like comfort or like huggingness. It's usually
Yeah.
there's always like that kind of like battle or whatever.
Yeah.
And I like that twist on it. If
Yeah.
I'm being honest.
I think for us with that, it was, for one, it was really cool to be able to kind of work on a sort of different type of story. It's like I've been wanting to kind of do like a kind of cute, kind of lovey-dovey, kind of like, you know, teen love story thing, whatever. Like, and I still want to. I got the bug in me now. I'm like, I really want to do it or whatever. But also for me, it's like at the end of the day, like this is Carl's world, and like we're able to like, if this is the story we want to tell, like this is what happens in this world that we're working in, you know, like it's easy to be, you know, like, you know, and full disclosure, like I'm, you know, straight dude, whatever. I'm not doing it for points. I'm just like, you know, it's a cool thing. It's like, and again, the cool thing about you know, Carl's fandom and stuff is very diverse, very queer, very cool and friendly, and just like a lot of these kids, a lot of these just kids in general nowadays, like the stuff is so much more accepting to them. But again, it's like that's the type of stuff that they live and breathe, and it's like I don't know, we kind of just, even though this is this huge fantasy world, we also want to show the real world within these sort of things too, and not make a big deal about it. It's just like, here's like a cute little story about two people falling in love, but it just happens to be two girls or whatever. And again, it's like, it's not something I try to do to, you know, pat myself over the back over it. It's just like something that's like, it's more for the fans, you know, it's more just for like kids out there reading these books and, you know, I don't know, wanting to see themselves on the page, you know, like we have the opportunity to present that. And it's like, that's something we definitely like, I don't know, it's like super important for us to just like have that stuff, you know, just be there, you know, in the stories, because it's in the real world, you know, and we need to see more of it.
It's normal, man.
Yeah.
In the end, it's normal. And for me, it doesn't change the rest of like Time Traveler's Tale, because like I love how I love on how you guys like it, like there's an overarching story, obviously, that you're like, you know, you're stringing out and whatnot, and we get the little dips in it in each episode, or each episode. Here I am talking like a TV show.
They kind of are episodes though. Yeah, they're kind of paced like episodes though. It is that wouldn't be the wrong thing. Yeah,
it's and like you get it. It's I don't know. I loved it. Like the cover arts has all of the art has just been phenomenal.
Oh, Kelly and Nicole are like amazing. Like they're just like on another level.
It's insane. I love the cover to issue 3.
Was that the
clock?
Yeah, that's Kate Sheridan. They're amazing. Yeah, they're like they're a cartoonist from I think they're from Northeast, I think. Yeah, Kate Sheridan, amazing cartoonist. They're the best. Love that. Love those colors. Yeah, that's another thing too. Like, and then we got Craig Rousseau for cover 4. That's who did the Perhapanauts Who Rules. Issue 1 is Wendy Chen. I'm blanking on, I forgot. Forgive me, I can't think of who did the cover issue 2, but all covers have been awesome. And
cover Rain Falls.
Yeah, totally. So Rain also did, there is a like web store exclusive for issue 1 that's like a different cover that was only available online.
Oh, okay.
And Rain did the other one too for issue 1, which is awesome. So thank you for Rain. Oh, great work. Yeah, so good.
I got mine.
Look at that. Who's that? Who signed that? Cool. Who's that cool guy?
That? Dave did.
Yeah. No, but it's been awesome, man. It's like I said, at the end of the day, this is Carl's thing, and it's awesome that he brings us on board and we're able to do our thing and play in his, you know, his world, and it's really fun. And like I said, is the whole fan base couldn't be cooler and more inviting, and I don't know, it means a lot that they're super cool.
That's excellent.
Yeah, and then we got issue 5 next month, and that's a very, very Dave Scheidt issue. That's very, you know, very Castlevania. I'll just say that is issue 5.
Excellent.
I have like specific Castlevania notes in there where like reference this and this, but it's very like, you know, just the stuff that I like in general, we're able to kind of mix into the story, so it'll be cool.
Well, I mean, even in issue 4, you're slipping in some video games, right?
Yeah.
What is it, Friday the 13th video game?
Yeah.
In there? All your friends are dead?
Yeah, first page, that was cool. And again, like just like I said, it's just showing like Kelly and Nicole, like what they're able to do. my scripts pretty much, I don't really write differently for anyone else. Like I kind of write the same for all my creators, you know, that I work with. And seeing just like how my work is interpreted in different ways, like how Kelly and Nicole are just like, I don't know, so cool. Really good stuff.
Yeah, their art's been awesome.
Yeah.
It's been a great ride. Now, is this only 5 issues or is this ongoing, or are you guys doing like chunks like 5 and then another 5, or how's Time Traveler Tales going?
So I can't really talk too much about that. So
Fair
for
enough.
now we just yeah, so for now, currently like what's out right now is what's going to be available.
Okay.
I love doing it, so we'll see. You know, working with Carl rules. It's really just what people want to do, you know. And also the trade's out in August. So you know, if more people like it, hopefully that would be cool. I would love to work on more, you know. It's just you know,
It's great.
yeah, it's gonna be cool though. I'm really excited. I'm really excited about the trade because I feel like I don't know, it's just available way more. You can get it at bookstores and stuff, and it's like way easier to get that. And a lot of people rather read stuff just through the book or whatever. And the cool thing about Carl's fan base is it's like super international. So one problem we've been running into is a lot of people just don't have comic stores near them. So it's kind of like a weird thing. But like once that book's out, that's like everywhere. You know, bookstores, you get it, whatever. You know, so yeah, the trade's out in August, and that'll be really cool. And I think a lot more people are going to check it out through the trade once that happens. So that'll be really cool too, because that's just like a whole nother kind of audience, you know. And being able to read them all together, I think will be really cool, you know.
Absolutely. I mean, like I get it. Whether I mean, I will still always pick up my monthly issues, but I definitely buy like trades and stuff as well. Like that's actually probably how I keep up with the majority of like the like let's just call it like Marvel and DC stuff. Usually probably through trades and not actually weekly books, except for Nightwing. Nightwing and the Turtles are probably the only 2 superheroes that I collect like truly like monthly books and have been for like years and years.
That's how I would rather read. Like obviously it's like I love supporting people, and you should still buy comics weekly. Absolutely. Support your local comic shops and stuff, you know. Like for me though, I prefer reading the collections or whatever. That's why I love digital too, because sometimes you could just it's easier to read, you know. I never thought I was a digital guy, then I got like just like a Kindle Fire, and I was just cranking through stuff on Hoopla. I use Hoopla through my library.
Oh, nice.
And there's just like ton of stuff on there, so it's like it's really cool cranking through stuff. But I just prefer to have a whole story, you know. Like that for me, that's just how I like to read. Yeah.
Absolutely. So we've got a couple of questions left here before we go ahead and wrap up. First question here is, what is one piece of advice you wish you had starting out that you have now? Like, what is one piece of advice you wish you could, or one piece of advice you wish you had when you were starting out as a writer, going on your path? First starting out.
Yeah. I would say the first thing that comes to mind is for the longest time, you know, like I was working a day job and still doing comics, and I always kind of had this inclination that like if I go out of town for a convention, that like, oh well, that's vacation because I'm out at my day job, which it's not. You know what I mean? Like comic conventions, comic shows, events, as cool as they are, right? Love doing them. Like their work. If you're there to sell copies or if you're there to promote your stuff or whatever, like you're at work. So it's like getting in that mindset of like, it's hard to kind of do when you're first starting off because it's like comics mean the world to me, right? I love comics. It's super fun. I'm super grateful to be here and all that. And it's like super easy to let the excitement of like you being, oh, I'm here, like this is great, to like kind of negate the fact that like it's like you're still there, you know what I mean? And like you're still kind of like using your free time to be somewhere else. You're essentially like working, you know, multiple jobs or whatever. I think I would just be way more conscious of the fact that like comics are a job, you know, and treating it more, you know, not that I never really treated it like as a job, but like being more conscious of like taking time off outside of just like, if I'm not at my day job, that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm on vacation just because I'm not doing my 9 to 5 or whatever, you know, if that makes sense. And I think just like having hobbies outside of whatever creative pursuit you're doing is like so important, and like never letting that kind of bleed through and like kind of like, you know, because I think nowadays it's so easy to commodify everything. It's to make content out of everything, you know, and it's like I never want to be in a position where like everything that I used to like is just like work for me now. Like I never want to do that. I still want to be able to disconnect and watch a movie or disconnect and play a video game or read a comic or whatever. Because I do feel like I kind of burnt out a lot as far as like on comics and kind of like wasn't keeping up on a lot of stuff, and I kind of had to I don't know, kind of rebuild and kind of like work on myself to be able to like look at that stuff as like fun again, instead of, because it's easy just to like get in that mindset that like anything comic related now is like work for me. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm still able to separate that now. I could still read for fun now. For a
Yeah.
while, I was like, I don't want to look at any other comics that aren't mine, just because it's like I spend so much time on my own stuff and working with my friends and all that, where it's like it's kind of like I'm clocking back in or something.
Yeah.
So I kind of was just able to kind of teach myself to like enjoy those things again, you know. So I think another important thing is just to have stuff outside of what you're doing and have something that you do where you're to get your mind off of, you know, whatever you're doing. So have hobbies.
Have hobbies.
Heck yeah.
Second question.
Yeah.
What's the last great thing you read? Book, comic, script? Could be a reread of one of your favorite things.
So I've actually been rereading a lot of stuff. I've been teaching myself how to write picture books, just kind of like, so I've just been reading a ton. This one, Kelly Lee Miller, you can't really say I love my things.
Nice.
I've just been reading like a ton of, and this was really cute too. This Gustavo the Shy Ghost, that one was really cute. And this other one, it's the same author, Flavio Drago. I love this one, Vlad the Fabulous Vampire. He's like super into like fashion and stuff. He's like super cute. I've just been really into a lot of picture book stuff, just because it's the cool thing is like there's a lot of similarities to comics as far as just like I don't know, just like creatively, it's like you're still writing for an artist, you're still collaborating, you're still one person's bringing something, another person's bringing, like it's just like really cool collaboration. But it's really cool getting into like an art form that's like I really don't know like anything about, you know.
Yeah.
Like I'm kind of just discovering this stuff in real time, so it's like I'm able to just like I have no sort of like, that's the weird thing when you work in like an industry, right? Like if you work in movies or comics or music or whatever, it's like if you know, say you're a musician and you toured with like a band that like sucks, or like someone who's like rude to you or something, it's hard to separate that sort of thing of like, hey, I know this person's a jerk, so it's like whatever. Like I don't know like any of these picture book people, so it's like cool. I could just enjoy it just as is. You know, I have no sort of like preconceived notions of like this publisher put this out or this author or like whatever. I'm just taking in all these new stories and kind of just living and breathing. I've been really into, what's this dude's name? John Klassen is like an amazing illustrator. He did this.
Nice.
He did this book I just read called The Skull, and it was like this like retelling of like a Slavic folklore thing about this like little girl that finds the skull, and it's like in this castle.
Okay.
And it's just like super cool and really like, I don't know, just the format to me is insane. Just like how powerful like something could be, but still done in like a simple language, you know, but it's still really profound and really good. And like that's kind of what scares me, because it's like you know, at the end of the day, anyone could probably do a 200-page comic because you have like so much room to work. But when you suddenly are like, hey, I only have 20 pages of story as opposed to writing 200, it's like horrifying, but also it's like that's going to make you a better storyteller, being able to tell a story, you know, within like shorter parameters or whatever. Yeah, so it's just like teaching me a lot about storytelling and just like kind of just like figuring out like what's important, you know, what to cut out, bare essentials, like that sort of thing. So it's like, I kind of feel like I'm going back to school with it. It's really fun. It's exciting, like learning new stuff, you know. As I get older, that's something like learning new things just as like for fun is very like interesting to me, because it's like not a forced thing. I don't have to do it. It's just this thing I'm interested in. Like, hey, this sounds cool. Let me find out more about this, you know.
Yeah, let me learn how to do this or do that.
Yeah, it's cool. I recommend people doing that too, you know. And it could just be for you. It doesn't have to be for anyone. You don't have to try to, you know, commodify it. It's just like if you want to learn how to play the kazoo, you know, go for it.
Yeah, right.
You know, it'll be cool, you know, learn a new skill.
All right, our final question for you: do you have anything to promote, or are you appearing anywhere coming up soon that you want to tell us about?
Yeah, so I would say the most recent thing is going to be, I don't know when this airs, but Time Traveler Tales issue 5 is going to be out in April, so that's coming out next month. The trade of that is going to be on August for Time Traveler Tales, like the complete collection of all 5 issues so far. And I'll be at C2E2, I don't know the exact date, end of April.
It is April 26th, 27th, and 28th.
Yeah,
that's
cool.
That Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Okay, yeah, so end of April, yeah. And I don't know, I've been posting more video stuff, so I've been on Instagram and TikTok a lot at Dave Scheidt. So just give me a follow on there if you're, you know, into what I'm doing.
Absolutely. Dave is given all kinds of notes actually about writing, how to work, how to like just do stories or whatever it is. all over TikTok. They're actually really great.
Thank you.
I'm taking my own notes on
awesome.
them for things. But it's been awesome. And Dave, so we're gonna go ahead and wrap up, man. I appreciate you.
Yeah, man, this was awesome. This was really fun. I thank you for having me.
Yeah. You can find Wrapped Up in your local comic shops or bookstores. You can find Agents of Slam in your local comic shop or bookstores. You can definitely find Mayor Goodboy in local comic shops and your local bookstores. If you're in the Chicagoland area, check out Alternate Reality, Challengers, and Blurred's Underground for comic book shops, and Bookies for local bookstores.
Totally.
Those are the places that I tend to travel to and where I like to go and have a great time. Dave, I want to thank you for joining me. I am JimmE with the Triple C Collective. Hope you all stay safe. Please like and subscribe to this video and to our channel, and give Dave Scheidt a follow and a like at Dave Scheidt. And yeah, we hope you all stay safe. This is the end of episode 2. See ya.
Thank you.